Frank, and it's Wednesday morning, the 3rd of February. Yes, we're into the month of February. The months go by fast. So last time we finished sort of with, we went quickly through 3:5 of Genesis.
3:6, I think we touched on.
I may have touched on 3:6 or said we would come back to that, but I want to go back a little bit with 5 because I was reading what Dennis Prager said, and I thought he's got this down pretty good. First, Satan, or the snake, lied to her. Secondly, in verse 5, but God knows that as soon as you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. He's trying to persuade the woman that the prohibition was given for God's sake, to protect God from Adam and Eve becoming like him. In other words, God didn't want competitors. And thirdly, you will be like divine beings who know good and bad. We talked a little bit about divine beings, but we didn't talk about this third step. The serpent ones lead the woman astray. So first he overstayed the prohibition, and then he secondly attacked God's motive, and thirdly he tried to convince her she will not only not suffer if she violates the prohibition, she will be greatly benefited. These 3 steps offer a classic presentation of the way people are often led to do wrong. First, something's exaggerated, then denigrated, and then the other side's motives are questioned. The other side's motive then promised a reward. Okay? One obviously, but rarely, a question is asked, why is the serpent necessary to the story? So God, we said, has to set up a situation where they have a choice. And they may not see this choice without someone in their face saying, this is a better idea, to give the other choice a competition. So this is what Dennis says. He says, the serpent represents the root of human evil, attempting to displace God's moral authority. So the serpent is the voice in human beings telling them they are or should be godlike, meaning they can rely solely on themselves to determine what is right and wrong. And so this is what's happening in the secular world in the West. People increasingly rely on their feelings to determine right and wrong. It doesn't feel good. Or, oh man, that was right thing. I could just feel it in my heart. So they don't rely on God. They do not rely on religion. They do not rely on the Bible. Morally speaking, they're their own God. So when we become our own God, we're on the wrong track, and we're not going to hear the right thing. Okay? So when the woman, now verse 6, when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom, the tree tempted the woman's appetite, good for eating, taste. Eyes, it was good for the eyes. And the mind, a source of wisdom. By emphasizing that the tree offered these great rewards to the woman, the Torah may be eliciting some sympathy for, and certainly an understanding of Eve's decision to disobey God and eat from the tree. In other words, how do we feel, the word feel, for Eve? Look at all this stuff coming at her, Okay.
And it didn't affect the ear or the smell.
No, it didn't affect those 2 things. One clear lesson is how much trouble our eyes get us into. The woman saw that the tree was a delight to the eye. The ear is ultimately more trustworthy than the eye. It is generally less superficial and emotional. So in America, we have the expression eye candy.
It's 10 hours.
Oh, it's 10 o'clock. And describes television programs, movies, and advertisements that are intellectually empty but enticing visually, usually depicting attractive women. There's no comparable expression, ear candy. I have an ear candy, though.
You do?
Yeah, I love to listen to classical music.
Oh.
But I often had said to people, these advertisements that we get on TV, etc., they make it so enticing. And they're trying to appeal. You need this. If you want beautiful skin, you'll get this cream. If you eat this thing, something good is going to happen to you. It's the same thing. And if we listen to these things, then we buy. And the company gets big and strong and healthy. Anyway, so she took of the fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband. God had warned Adam, and by implication Eve, that if they ate from the tree of knowledge, they would die.
Yeah.
To her credit, the woman did not use Adam as a guinea pig. Once she decided to listen to the serpent, she sampled the fruit herself. And when she remained alive, the woman concluded the serpent was right and shared the fruit with her husband.
Oh, boy.
He sees all this going on, and he knows better. Anyway, it sounds like, and he ate. He didn't hesitate. Maybe he was seeing with his eye, oh, she's not dead. So, then the eyes of both of them were open, and they perceived they were naked. And Adam and Eve looked at their bodies and discovered sexuality. They already knew about procreative sex because they were commanded to reproduce.
Right.
But such sex was what we would call innocent. Innocent sex.
Oh, yeah.
Only after they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil did they become aware of non-innocent erotic aspects of human sexuality. I didn't bring that out before. This is what Prager is saying about this. He's saying there's a difference of sexuality before the fall and after the fall.
Sure.
So Adam and Eve grew up in much the same way young people do when they become sexually aware. The word for naked here is subtly different from the word for naked in Genesis 2:25. I tried to find that when I was looking in the Hebrew, and I wasn't sure whether I could see it, where the Torah describes Adam and Eve as naked but not embarrassed by their nakedness. Okay, that's the difference. There, the word is arumim, and here the word is he says irumim. That's the difference of just a little tiny I that comes in there. To underscore this is a different naked than before. Okay, so I noticed that, but I didn't know why it was that way. So there was a difference in how they saw themselves before and after. The before says, and they didn't know they were naked.
Okay.
I expressed the thought that somehow or another there was a glory of God on them, and you notice the glory of God, not the nakedness.
Yeah, it was like God's clothing or something like that.
Yeah. But we have nothing that says that.
No.
So we are all Adam and Eve. And we all, at some point in our young life, like around 2, 3, or 4, become aware of being naked and wanting to put clothes on. It might be a little older than that for some kids. Depends on the child.
Yeah.
And they sewed together fig leaves and made themselves loincloths. Presume when it says loincloths, this is to cover their genitals. They heard the sound of God moving about in the garden at the breezy time of day. Now, this breezy time of day would be a comfortable breeze. They maybe after the heat of the day.
Yeah, kind of relaxing.
Yeah,
enjoying the sunset.
I see the word breeze and I think of how God sometimes speaks to us. He gets our attention with a breeze goes by our face and then a thought comes right after it.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah, because that's what happened to me. It wasn't something I felt, it's something I heard. My ear.
Yeah.
And the man and his wife hid from Hashem, God, among the trees of the garden. Now, why are they hiding? They never did before when the Lord God moved among the garden. So, verse 9, the Lord God called out to the man. God addressed Adam and not the woman.
Yeah. Well, Adam was the one in charge.
That's right.
He was the husband.
It was to Adam the prohibition against eating from the tree was given.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in charge.
Yeah.
He had just told his wife. So now she was answering to him. And God continues and says, where are you?
Sometimes a man listens to his wife and he shouldn't.
Sometimes he should. So God asked the question. Now, a lot of people like to talk about why is God asking Adam where he is when he knows where he is?
Yeah.
It's a rhetorical question. It's a counselor's question. Not to accuse Adam of something.
Okay.
Let Adam come up with what he's done.
Yeah.
And it's going to be much more meaningful to Adam if he can say, oh, I ate of that fruit that you didn't want me to.
Yeah.
And that confronting himself is now what am I going to do about it sort of thing. But of course,
So
God...
right away, Adam admits that he ate the fruit.
No, he didn't. Unfortunately, he didn't. His reply is, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Okay. He's talking about his experience. He's avoiding the question. He could have said, well, I'm here in the garden, and I got hit by the fact that I'm naked. I might have done something wrong, but he didn't. He just says, "Oh, I'm afraid."
For whatever reason, I know I'm naked now. I'm afraid.
I'm afraid, and I'm naked, so I hid. When we're afraid, we hide, or we lie, or we run away. We do something, and so fear entered into his psychic. Then he asked, who told you that you were naked? Did you eat of the tree from which I had forbidden you to eat? So they're all questions. God's trying to get Adam to admit the truth.
Yeah.
He
does, of course.
It's important. It's important for us to face up to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing this when I was young, when we got caught doing something we weren't supposed to. My dad would ask questions. Why did you do that? What were you doing? Why didn't you listen to me? All these questions come when you get caught. And I knew I was guilty. I'd step up and get my spanking. My brothers, they had to be caught for the spanking, and in some cases. And I remember Ken, I don't remember what Ernie said, but Ken always said, I won't do it again. So I asked him once, how come we'd send him in to get an answer from Mom, and he'd come back and tell us that she said the positive and when she'd said the negative. And I'd say, how come you never tell us what she really said? We always get into trouble when you do that. He says, it only hurts for a little while. I'll never forget that. It only hurts for a little while. Then they complain for why I didn't get spankings. I should have said, it hurts too long.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't want to hurt. Whereas some people choose to hurt and do what they want,
Yeah.
So that's the way we are. Anyway. Then he asked, who told you you were naked? Okay, nobody told me I was naked. I can see it. So the man gives an excuse. Now, here's the excuse. It's not I did it. The woman you put at my side, she gave me of the tree and I ate. I mean, it was just automatic. I couldn't help myself. She gave this to me. How can I reject what she gave me?
Yeah.
So there's no shift, no admitting the truth there. There was a shift to blame. Blaming others for wrongs we have done is literally as old as humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And so blaming is a sign that we are not ready to take responsibility for our actions.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to make excuses for why we did something because we're always right too. And he goes into that. This is on different levels, government levels, parent levels, all kinds of levels. I see something here. He says, the regimes blame imperialism for their country's corruption. Many murders blame poverty or difficult childhood for their criminality. And it goes on and on. So we have to get past that. And anyone that's blaming others for the problems is usually a very immature person because they don't see that they have done anything wrong as everybody else. So in verse 13, and the Lord God said to the woman, what is this you've done? And the woman replied, the serpent duped me and I ate. Now it's not my fault. It's that silly serpent you put in the garden. He duped me. He's the one that deceived me, not me. I knew I wasn't supposed to eat. Victor Hamilton fairly compares the woman's response to the man. She doesn't say the serpent whom you made, like Adam.
Oh.
Because that lays the blame on God.
Mm.
But it's that serpent there. But she did blame someone else. So the Lord said to the serpent, because you did this. Now, God doesn't ask the serpent any questions.
No.
He just says, you did this. Animals are not culpable. They can't be blamed for anything. They don't have a conscience that says you can't do this or you can do that.
But it almost sounds like he made a choice to do this to them. Unless God programmed it, I guess.
I think that there's an override here where God allowed, or he sort of made the serpent like an advocate or an adversary.
Yeah.
He created the adversaries. Some people call this the first show of Satan. God created Satan for the purpose of being an adversary, so that we would have the choice. This is what's behind it.
Yeah, well, if the serpent hadn't spoken, there wouldn't have been any test. They would have just gone on.
I don't think they would have. They were innocent. They wouldn't have done.
They wouldn't have.
I don't think they deliberately would have.
They wouldn't have thought about. They may have looked at the tree by themselves, but somehow the words from the serpent is what caused them.
In other words, without the other voice speaking to them, they were hearing God's voice, and that's all they were hearing.
Yeah.
And so they weren't doing the wrong thing.
But God wants to be sure that we really want to hear His voice.
That's right. Do you really choose my voice over any other voice? So He has to have another voice there. So God didn't curse Adam and Eve, but He does curse the serpent. You're more cursed than all the cattle and the wild beasts.
Mhm.
And you shall crawl on your belly. And you shall eat dirt, which isn't a bad thing. That's what the Jews say. That means dirt means there's plenty of dirt. You'll never be hungry.
But who wants to eat dirt? Yeah.
Okay, among other things, God's curse deified the serpent. Okay, that means he's not a god,
Mhm.
which many pagan societies have made
Yeah,
snakes into gods.
that's true.
There's an altar to Nahash down there in, I think it's in Timnah we saw that.
Mhm.
Remember that little place where Nahash is a word for serpent in Hebrew. So throughout the Torah seeks to undermine polytheism by dethroning the gods of the ancient world. And Prager says here, the 10 plagues of Exodus were directed against the Egyptian gods.
Mhm.
And he has a list of those gods in a commentary on Exodus 7:5.
Wow.
So in verse 15, God says to the woman, now this is not a curse, but he says something happened. I'll put enmity between you and the woman. This is to the serpent, and between your offspring and hers. Mm-hmm. He changes it from singular to plural. They shall strike your head. That means the offspring of her are plural. And you shall strike at their heel. And he's going to be after the offspring of the woman. And so it's not just a one person deal that's going to deliver her, or it's not one person that's going to be her head that gets struck, or one person that gets the heel struck. It's all of her descendants. And to the woman he said, I will make most severe your pangs in childbearing. In pain you will bear children. And so now he's turned from the snake to the woman. He's not cursing her. I will make you have more severe pains in childbearing. Now, why would childbearing be more painful? I think it's because of the fear that entered. Fear creates a contraction of the muscles, and the muscle contraction makes the pain more severe. That's what I learned when I took the Lamaze course.
Okay.
So I think that this is a result rather than a curse of having sinned and being naked and all the things that go with it. Then the second thing, verse 16, your urge shall be for your husband. This is the sexual part that Prager introduced earlier.
We might say here that she must have known what childbirth was like without that suffering.
I would think so. It seems like
Adam also knew what gardening was like before this happened.
That's right. There has to be some kind of a comparison.
Yeah.
In order to know what you shall surely die will mean. Mm-hmm. And you'll have childbearing pains greater than what? I haven't experienced any childbearing pains.
And we don't know the time period they were in the garden. We don't know how many children they had before this happened.
No, I know. This is something that could be debated. The ultra-Orthodox Jews, at least, I don't know about Orthodox Jews, believe that God created Adam on the 6th day. The 7th day was Shabbat. Mm-hmm. And right after Shabbat, he sinned. I don't like to think that he was that nothing happened, that there was nothing that he...
We already said earlier that these days were time periods.
That's right, they're time periods, but also I don't think time started until Adam sinned.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, day is a time period. The sun comes up, the sun
Yeah.
goes down. That's the day. There's in the day, in the time period that you live. Um, but I don't think that they thought about time like we do now. Uh, they lived in kind of an eternity.
They didn't have any wristwatch.
No. So they, I don't think that we can say for sure
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
Now we just saw the article about finding the olives that they produced in this land for table eating, 6,600 years old.
Yeah.
That certainly is before the time that they want to pin if you want to
Right.
pin a time on. And so I don't think we can set these things in a time period.
Okay.
God is giving this story and these things that happened so that we can learn a lesson.
Mhm.
And we can get into time now when we get past
Yeah.
their sin.
Right.
So anyway, in verse 16, your urge shall be for your husband. This urge for the husband is a well-known feminist logo in the 60s. A woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle.
Huh?
That's what Trip Prager has here.
Fish without a bicycle.
Not a fish without a bicycle.
That makes sense.
But anyway, okay, Frank, I agree with you. It is a little peculiar. Anyway, a certain percentage of women have a yearning for a man. What the women's movement is trying to say is you don't need a man.
Mhm.
The urge for a man to love and be loved is something that we've gotten. You can be independent of that.
Yeah, we're equal to men.
Yeah. So that's sort of like throwing off. That's really like seeing this thing as a curse and trying to throw it off.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a state that we are in because we live on this side of this side of reality, and time has that aspect in it. We have a stronger ego that goes into it. We have fears. We have desires that are stronger.
Was this a bad thing?
What to want a man?
To want a man, and that the man would rule over you?
I think that they were supposed to rule together, so it is kind of a negative thing.
Okay, then, like we said with childbirth, and we're going to say about gardening, we have to say that this statement, in a way, tells us what it was like before they ate the fruit.
Yeah.
That there was an equal
relationship.
Yeah.
They blended together. Yeah, verse 16 continues and says, and he shall rule over you. So that implies that he hadn't been ruling over her before.
It wasn't.
But I don't think it was the kind of thing where we've got today, the woman's out to prove that she can do something better than a man.
No.
Or as good as a man. No. I don't think it was that kind of thing.
No, I just had a thought.
Yeah.
If he wasn't ruling over Eve, that may be one reason why he took the fruit from her.
Could be. And
I mean, when God addresses Adam in the garden, it implies that Adam was the one that was in charge, but in a way they were both equal. And
yeah, he goes into how there isn't, it contradicts the egalitarian thinking. In other words, they're equal. He tells the reality women do seek a man stronger than they are. They seek a man who earns more money than they do. But this isn't all true, entirely true anymore now that we've had feminism.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go into all the stuff he says about that. He's got about 3 pages. Now God addresses Adam, and what we are almost out of time for this today, aren't we?
That's getting close, yeah.
So he says to Adam, because you did as your wife said, in other words, you obeyed her instead of me, and ate of the tree which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it.
So that again sounds like he was in charge. So
Well, it sounds like he was supposed to take responsibility because he got.
Maybe there's a difference there between ruling over and just being responsible for the
I think it's responsible because he was given the command and he reiterated the command to her. So when she started to look at the fruit and desire it, he should have reminded her of what he had said and say, it's really not good for us to do this. We shouldn't listen to this snake.
Yeah, and ruling over almost implies he can force her or something, you know. As
I think the word rule there does imply that. Maybe we're more when God said to rule over the kingdom.
Of course, women don't like that, you know. That I mean, when you contrast the word rule with whatever the relationship they had before, then that becomes a difficult thing.
I believe that when we have faced up to our realities as adults and we marry, that this tampers that down. It's the man doesn't rule over. He tries to do what's best and bring out the good things that his wife can do, and she the same for him. It's more of an equal thing. But as long as you're in the situation they are in where they're accusing each other and they're not acting like adults, then you get the situation where, oh, she made me do it. I've got to make sure she doesn't do this kind of stuff to me again. It's like that kind of rule over her. So he says, because you did as your wife said and ate of the tree about which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed be the ground. Now he doesn't curse Adam. He curses the ground. Because of what your actions, the ground is cursed. So by toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. So that's, I think, the end of verse 17. So that's the idea, though, does go into 18. Thorns and thistles shall sprout. Remember the story that they had in Fireland? They had something about a man taking something the woman gave, and that's where the thorns came from. That was theirs. This says, the sweat of your brow you shall get bread to eat until you return to the ground. He doesn't say anything about the sweat. That's an interesting Hebrew construction there. And it's hard, that's what they've come up with. But it's something about water and nose. And it could mean that it's sweat. Maybe you sweat so much it runs down off your nose. I don't know. Anyway, he's going to have to work hard. It's been easy just clipping off the vines and picking the fruit. And then he emphasizes in verse 19, you were taken from the ground and you're going to return there.
Does that mean that wasn't going to happen before?
It does mean that. Or if it did, you weren't aware of the change because you were focused on the other side. You were focused on what your spirit was saying.
Some people say there was no death before this.
This was telling Adam that human beings will be the opposite of what the serpent promised they would be, not like gods, but mere dust. That's what Prager says. But of course, because we are created in God's image, we are not mere dust. It is good for us to be constantly aware of both, that we are, when we get too arrogant, to remember that we're dust, and when we feel lowly and unworthy, to remember we are created in God's image. That's a good word for that, and to close with that, because in Ecclesiastes it says the neshama returns to God. So what came from God goes to God. What came from the dust goes to the dust. And whether or not their bodies would have actually worn out, or would they have just been changed? See, I personally believe that we get a body that can't be destroyed, but it's because we have obeyed God, and we get programmed in such a way that it changes the actual physicality of our body. So whether we go into the ground or whether we get changed, the ultimate thing is we get a new body. And you might say, well, the snake, he crawls out of his skin and he has a new skin. Maybe we get a new skin. And maybe we're not ashamed in the new skin. Anyway, there's lots of things that you could think about. So we'll start with verse 320 next time. And you have a good week, and we'll see what happens.